Chapter 20, Hello JJ, November 2002. I called Teacher, the Solo Angels US president in LA, the night of Rudy's arrest and told him what was up. I said the second the cuffs got clamped on Rudy's wrist, I'd become the Solo president in Arizona. He said it was fine with him so long as we kept up with dues and all. I told him not to worry. Then I called Bad Bob and Smitty and told each of them I was intern P until Rudy's situation cleared up. I had to play it like his fate was uncertain, and as a supposed ally, I had to sound like I had hoped he'd beat the rap. I knew he wouldn't, and I knew my new post was permanent. Next order of business was our new partner. Pops and I picked her up at the Phoenix airport on November 5th. We drove the Merc and met her at baggage claim. She wore black jeans, a white t-shirt, and a California smile. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail with a large black scrunchie. Her bangs brushed the tops of her eyebrows. A nice-looking, healthy young American woman, equal parts innocent, enthusiasm, and confidence. It wasn't a disguise. JJ was a good woman, and a good woman was what I needed. We felt it would be less convincing if she looked too much like a biker tramp. A cardinal rule of undercover work is to tell as few lies as possible, and in spite of what you think, to be yourself. JJ was genuine. I could see it, and I was banking that the Angels would see it too. Pops waited for her bag while we chit-chatted. I said, "You're a sore sight for eyes." She smiled and said, "You look like shit." I was in the standard get-up, minus my solo cut and guns. We were inside, but my sunglasses were still on. I had on a black knit ski cap with the word serial killer stitched across the forehead. I said, "Great, you're gonna fit right in." "I hope so," she said. We've been briefing her over the phone since Rudy's arrest. She got in the general rundown. Our areas of operation, the names of principals, what kinds of deals we've been doing. During one of the calls, Slats commented that we needed to be bringing in more drugs. I interjected that we've been doing alright on guns and basic RICO stuff, but that our drug buys were mostly small, teeners of meth, dimes, and nicks of marijuana, a few dozen pills. Slats told JJ that he hoped she'd be able to help us secure more junk. "No problem," she said. We went over her cover story. We kept it consistent with what Smitty and Lydia knew about her. That we used to date a few years back, and that since we'd run into each other at La Jolla, she'd done a couple runs south of the border for me. The runs had gone well, and we'd hooked back up. We weren't sure we were going to be spending all of our time together, but we were into each other enough that she was going to start spending weekends in the desert, going back west during the weekends to take care of business for me and my SoCal associates. To lend all of this some credibility and make it look like she wasn't popping out of the woodwork, we decided to run a little longer in Bullhead, where the people who already knew her could get to know her better, and then vouch for her sudden appearance on the scene across the state. Once she got established, she'd been more operational responsibility. I knew that if she stood around acting like she was waiting for me to take her home every night, she'd get bored quickly, and she wouldn't be as valuable to the case. We decided to treat her like one of the guys. She carried a gun too, in hopes that the Angels would respect her as much as we did. I told her, however, that there would be times when she'd have to act like one of the old ladies. It was still a man's world, and she couldn't appear to be privy to everything. She understood. It wouldn't look real if she was always some kind of super female. I told her not to worry though, that unlike a real old lady, she'd never be beaten for forgetting to bring home some Taco Bell for dinner or whatever. She laughed and said, "I hope not. Remember, I got a gun too." We left the airport and drove to the new undercover house on Romilly Road. Timmy was there hanging out with Casino Cal and a Mesa Angel named Mark Kruppa, a monster who weighed 260 at just 6 feet tall. I showed JJ to her room and went to use the bathroom. When I got out, she changed into a black tank top and let her hair down. I shook my head and she said, "Okay, I'm ready. Lead the way, ma'am." She passed me in the hall and walked toward the living room. I was ecstatic. Once in the living room, she asked if anyone wanted anything to drink. Everyone said beer. She turned to Timmy and asked, "We got beer, right, Timmy?" Timmy, who'd never met JJ in the flesh, said, "Yeah, in the fridge." She got up, floated into the kitchen, and brought back 4 cold cans of Bud Light. She handed Timmy one, stuffed 2 cans under her arm, opened one, handed it to Cal, opened another, handed it to Mark, opened another, and handed it to me. She went back to the kitchen, came back with 2 more beers, both open, and handed one to Pops. She took a long sip of hers and said in a measured deadpan, "Well, boys, you do whatever it was you were doing. I'm gonna go unpack." And she disappeared. No one said anything for a moment. We all drank. Cal looked at me, eyebrows raised, corner of his mouth turned down, and nodded. What a difference a woman makes. We went to the patch the next day and loaded the trailer with the bikes. Timmy and I climbed into the back seat. I lit a cigarette and told Pops to drive. Pops told JJ to drive. JJ looked at the trailer and said, "I've never driven a trailer before." I said, "Well, trial by fire." JJ tried to get out of it. I said, "Pops was at the bottom of the totem pole, but now that you're here, he's moved up a notch. Shit runs downhill, sweetheart. Standard rookie hazing." She drove. Pops warned her not to get put in any situations where she'd have to put it in reverse, which is exactly what she did in a Denny's parking lot near Prescott. We all laughed as she learned how to back up a vehicle with a trailer hitched to it. As with everything, JJ learned quickly. We checked into the house on Vernano Circle. I made a few calls to the Bullhead locals, telling them that we were around and wanted to hang out. I told them JJ was with me. We agreed to meet around 9 that night at the Inferno. Party, Bullhead style. Smitty was happy to see us. Lydia was happy to see JJ. JJ met Dennis and Dolly. We bought a few rounds and toasted the imminent marriage of Dolly and Dennis. Smitty grilled me for more Vegas grand jury info. I said I hadn't heard anything specific other than the prosecutors were definitely seeking RICO indictments. I assured him I told my source to dig deeper for information pertaining to HAMC member Donald Smith. He nodded solemnly, satisfied that I kept him in mind. JJ kept quiet company with Lydia and Dolly. She actually invited them and the boys over for dinner the next night. Steak and beer and Crown Royal and Cokes and potatoes and a couple pounds of bacon, half of it cooked black and crunchy. It was Smitty, Lydia, Dennis, Dolly, and Joby, plus all of us solos and JJ. It was a fun night. It felt real. I kicked back and bullshitted with the angels I'd known the longest. Timmy and I arm wrestled. He won. Joby and Smitty started off talking about Laughlin and spiraled into war stories of fights, beatings, shootings, and near misses. The house was wired and we recorded everything, but it was so much biker smack that it wouldn't have amounted to a hill of beans in court. Some local biker politics were a high order of business. There was an OMG called the Vagos, a small but strong club that had an on-again, off-again relationship with the Angels. They were commonly called the Green, since their lettering and the background of their center patch was a bright toxic green. In the middle of their center patch was a red devil riding the single-winged wheel of a motorcycle, like a genie rising from a lamp. A few Greens had recently been hanging around Bullhead without the Angels' permission. The main guy was a barrio cholo by the name of Nick Prano. Prano was in his mid-40s and had spent about 20 years in prison. Timmy and I befriended him back in August when he boasted that he just got off a 9-year stint for shooting a CHP cop in the head. He was one of those guys who took real pride in being a criminal, a man for whom spent time in prison was not time wasted, but time proven. He'd say, "All I like to do is work, drink, fight, chase pussy, and be an asshole." Typical biker dreamboat. It was a condition of his probation that he no longer reside in California, where the Vagos were most prominent. So he moved to Arizona. There had been some beef between him and Smitty because Prano wanted to put an Arizona bottom rocker on his cut. Smitty wouldn't have it. Timmy and I both witnessed the time Smitty took Prano aside and told him how it was going to be. It was in late August, and Timmy, Prano, and I were hanging out at a thug bar by the river called Lazy Harry's. Smitty and Dennis came in and walked up to Timmy, who stood by the door talking on the phone. Smitty looked my way and asked Timmy if I was hanging out with that genie Prano. Timmy confirmed I was. Smitty huffed. He and Dennis came up to us. Neither of them said anything to me. Smitty put his arm around Prano and asked him to step aside. They went and talked for about 5 minutes by the jukebox. They came back and we all hung out for a couple hours like old buddies. That was when Prano was informed that he'd never be permitted to stitch an Arizona bottom rocker on his cut, and that the HA would never tolerate the opening of an Arizona Vagos charter. The concession was that Prano would be able to ride freely in the state, flying his full colors. Apparently, that was acceptable. This was significant for a couple of reasons. First, it showed once again that the HA were in control in Arizona. This would be good for the RICO charges. Second, it proved that we done our due diligence since the Solos had been permitted to operate an Arizona charter, even if we, like the Vagos, also weren't permitted to fly Arizona rockers. The Vagos were a topic on the night of our dinner party because the Angels had found out that Prano was holding some information from them. Prano was a good criminal politician. He knew when to talk and when to shut up. I'm not sure he wanted anything in particular, but it didn't matter. I think mainly he wanted to be known that he wasn't a pushover and didn't care who his adversaries were. The information he held concerned the Kingman Mongols. He apparently had names and addresses, and the Angels wanted these badly, especially Joby. Motherfucker, that green motherfucker, I don't care. He makes any trouble and I'll shoot him myself. Joby had driven his pickup over from Kingman, and he brought a hunting rifle in from his truck. He sighted the gun on the neighbor's house. Dennis whined inconclusively. Joby shoved a bloody chunk of steel into his cheek. He chewed it, saying, I heard those Mongols over there got some crank operation going. A fucking meth ring and everything. Motherfuckers, I can't wait to kill those motherfuckers. Can't wait. Dennis squealed. Shoot them snitches. They were drunk. Joby was in another one of his homicidal moods. Sense was on vacation. In a twisted way, I liked it. I liked that these were the guys we were making. They were the real deal. I was kind of drunk too. We capped the night off at the Inferno. JJ, Dolly, and Lydia were like sorority sisters. When we broke for the night, Lydia whispered into my ear, I just love that JJ. Bird, just love her.